Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us here for Crime 2 News at 6. I'm Whitney Ward.
Welcome, everyone. I'm Mark Hanrahan. As part of our commitment to boomtown coverage, we are tracking growth in the inland Northwest, but that growth means homelessness has also gotten worse.
It has. So right now we know that plans are still moving forward to open up that big homeless shelter out on East Trent. However, some are questioning if that really is going to be the best way to tackle this problem. Many people who are homeless have already said they're not going to go to a big shelter. In the meantime, businesses are telling us they are suffering, and many have also said they're worried that we could be headed for the same problems Seattle has already experienced. So I made the trip to Seattle to see firsthand what's working and what isn't.
It's hard not to see the crisis that is homelessness in Seattle. It's along the freeways, under bridges, and camped out on city sidewalks.
As housing prices have just gotten even more out of control, more and more people are homeless. You know, people are being left outside.
So to move people inside and off the streets, one program is finding big success in a small package. Lehigh is Seattle's low-income housing institute. 5.5 years ago, the nonprofit put up 2 tiny homes for a pair of homeless veterans. The concept has since grown to more than 700 tiny homes in 17 villages across the Puget Sound area.
This is actually one of the newer tiny home villages. We're here in the University District of Seattle. I'm told there used to be a rather large tent encampment in this same area, but this has now replaced it. And as you can see, there's blackout fencing along the sidewalk. It would be very easy to walk on by and not even know what's inside. What did you know about a tiny home village before?
I knew that they were here and that they were a place to sleep. And I've learned that they're a lot more than that. They have like all the tiny homes on one side.
Belky Caicedo has been homeless once before, and she spent time at some of Seattle's biggest shelters. But for the last month and a half, she has lived here in this tiny home community called Rosie's Village.
Where would you have been if you didn't have this as an option?
In the tent outside.
Would you really?
Yeah.
Where would you have gone?
Probably under a bridge, you know, an abandoned house, a porch.
It became really clear that we needed to do something that would be quicker, less expensive, and find a way to protect vulnerable people who are unsheltered or living on the streets.
Sharon Lee is the executive director at Lehigh. She says it's not just about putting a roof over someone's head. Every tiny home village also has 24/7 staffing, indoor laundry, kitchens and bathrooms, and access to services like job counseling and physical and mental health providers.
What makes the tiny home village a better idea than a shelter?
People are able to recover much more quickly over the trauma of being homeless. So we help them with getting their IDs, filling out housing applications, filling out employment applications. Last year, 56% of the people who exited a village got into housing.
So is it meant to be kind of the stepping stone into permanent housing?
Absolutely. It's like a bridge to housing. We have some people that stay only a few weeks. Other people may stay 3 to 6 months.
It has also helped solve the problem of shelter resistance, offering individual privacy, a locking door, and the ability for families or couples to stay together.
This is Pinky.
They even allow pets.
Everyone thinks, oh, why don't you just buy one big tent and put everybody under one big tent? But then you're just asking for trouble.
And are you also potentially still going to be faced with the issue of people who just won't go to a shelter?
That's right. So there are vacancies in many of the congregate shelters, and it's very frustrating. And so people refuse to go. They'll rather just move to another sidewalk, move into another park. And so you haven't addressed that you're ending their homelessness, right? You're just like sweeping them to another location.
It is one of the most persistent challenges homeless advocates face.
And I couldn't tell if you were describing Seattle or Spokane.
Sarah Rankin is a professor at Seattle University's School of Law. She's been researching homelessness since the city declared it a state of emergency in 2015.
You've said in the past that shelters, the big, 100, 200 bed shelters, are one of the least effective tools available to cities.
Yeah.
Do you still agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Congregate shelters have been studied repeatedly. They have very poor performance rates in terms of making sure that people are exiting to something positive, right? Placements to permanent housing.
It's why she says cities like Spokane need to start focusing more on short-term alternatives as well as long-term housing.
Affordable housing is a big issue. And that is increasingly becoming a problem in places like Spokane and other desirable communities throughout the state.
What do you think a city like Spokane can learn from Seattle's experience so far?
Everybody has to slow down and realize that even if we have different ideas about how to go about this, we have to start from the page that this is a shared problem. Everyone wants homelessness to get better. And the way that that first happens is by seeing everybody at the table as a potential partner in making that happen. That is not something that happens in Seattle politics. There's a lot of fighting and posturing.
But Rankin says there are cities who are figuring it out, like Austin, San Diego, and Houston. And she says Spokane can do the same by learning where others have failed.
During our visit here, we spoke with a number of people who are currently experiencing homelessness. And just like in Spokane, many of them are camped out in places like this. This is DOT property. It is right along the side of the freeway. And many of the people who are living here say they feel like it's the only place they can go. They didn't want to talk on camera, but they did tell us that if given a choice of going to a nearby homeless shelter or spending their nights in a tent, they will choose to spend their nights in a tent. And that's why advocates say there is not going to be a quick fix here. Instead, it's going to take a number of long-term solutions to truly fix this problem. In Seattle, Whitney Ward, KREM 2 News. So coming up tomorrow, I took what I learned in Seattle and then I brought it back here to Spokane. So my one-on-one interview with Spokane Mayor Nadine Woodward, that is coming up tomorrow night right here on KREM 2 News at 6.
This is an issue that we continue to hear about more and more working in news, right? People are afraid that Spokane's going to turn into what Portland and Seattle are dealing with, especially now with that big homeless camp on I-90 and Frey. It's so much more visible, right?
There is no question that, we are not the only city that is dealing with this. Lots of cities across the country, of course, and up and down the West Coast. We toyed with going to Portland. We toyed with going to San Diego. We talked about all of these things, but again and again, we have heard from lots of different people, neighbors, business owners who are very concerned with what they're seeing here in Spokane and wondering if we're headed down the wrong path, if we're just going to fall into the same pitfalls that have gotten some of Seattle's areas into trouble. So that's why we chose to go there.
It is nice to see that they have a model there that is having success, right?
Yeah, and it's, it's not the silver bullet, right? There is no perfectly magical solution that's just going to fix everything. But they have, through trial and error, found that some of these things have shown success, not just in Seattle, not just isolated incidents, but in lots of different places.
All right, very good report.
I'll be very interested.
Thanks, Whitney.
Thanks.